What's going on, YouTube? We're back here today with another fantasy football video. Today we're going to be talking about the Week 4 wide receiver rankings. Before we get into the video, please do leave a like, comment, subscribe, especially if this video helped you out. So getting into the wide receivers, I have Cooper Kupp as my #1 wide receiver in all formats, standard and PPR. I believe most likely he will be the #1 all throughout the year. He didn't have the greatest of games last week, only scored 1 touchdown, 20 rushing yards, and 44 receiving yards on 4 catches. Pretty good game overall, but pretty lackluster for Cooper Kupp. He's a 3rd ranked wide receiver on the year, scoring about 17 points a game, while the 49ers allow around 17 points a game. I think this is a good game for Cooper Kupp to bounce back. The 49ers don't average a lot of points to wide receivers, but Cooper Kupp lives in a category of his own. At #2, I have Justin Jefferson, 8th ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging about 12 fantasy points, and the Saints give up about 20 points to wide receivers. He had a pretty big dud last week. Only had 3 catches for 14 yards, no touchdowns. That really brought down his score. Prior to that, Justin Jefferson was one of the highest scoring wide receivers. Definitely look for him to bounce back, especially if Dalvin Cook does not play. The Vikings may have to try to get a lot of points through the air. So expect a bounce back game from Justin Jefferson. Moving on to #3, Stefon Diggs, the #1 wide receiver on the year, against Baltimore Ravens, averages about 20 points a game, while the Ravens give up about 37 points to wide receivers. A lot of the games against the Ravens, they gave up the most points, yards, everything allowed so far in the year. And Buffalo is definitely going to try to take advantage. They're coming off a loss. I'm pretty sure Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs, and them are going to be trying to recoup that loss, try to continue their Super Bowl contention. I expect them, this game especially, to be a really high-scoring game, and I expect Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs to really get to work this game. At #3, we have Jamar Chase against the Miami Dolphins, 17th ranked wide receiver on the year, averages about 10 points, and the Dolphins allow about 25 points to wide receivers. Another game where Jamar Chase didn't have the greatest of games. However, against Miami Dolphins, I feel like this is going to be a huge scoring game as well, and I really think the Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers are really going to show out. Mixon was questionable. They said he's going to play, but if he doesn't play, it's also going to lead to Cincinnati really throwing the ball a lot, and there's not better options than Jamar Chase. Moving on to #5, Davante Adams against the Denver Broncos, 9th ranked wide receiver on the year, averages about 12 points in standard leagues, while the Broncos give about 13 points. Davante Adams had a little bit of a disappointing game last week as well. Even the week before that, the first week he really popped off, and it was very encouraging to see Davante Adams get that kind of numbers with Derek Carr at QB. But Carr has kind of, well, it wasn't completely Carr's fault, but Davante Adams didn't have the most productive of games last week, and he really needs to bounce back. Unfortunately, he plays the Broncos that don't really give up a lot of points to wide receivers, but the Broncos offense has been pretty bad as well. Could put the Raiders in a good position offensively. Moving on to A.J. Brown against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 7th wide receiver on the year, 12.3 points in standard leagues, and the Jaguars give up about 25 points. This is a really good game for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts going to continue his MVP run. Last week, Devontae Smith got like 150 yards. This week, the first week, A.J. Brown got 150 yards. So the Eagles can really get it going offensively, especially behind Jalen Hurts. And the Jaguars aren't an amazing defensive team, so this is a great game for A.J. Brown to really pop off. At #7, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Seahawks, the 4th wide receiver on the year, averaging about 17 fantasy points, while the Seahawks give up about 20 to wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, there's question of him maybe missing this week. He did hurt his ankle last week during the game. He still played through it, but I believe he is going to be day-to-day. I think he didn't practice the first day of the week. Not so encouraging for him, but they did say that it's not a major ankle issue. The Lions are already going to be without DeAndre Swift, so they're really going to need Amon-Ra St. Brown to really get points on the board. Next up, at #8, I have Mike Evans against the Chiefs, 46th ranked wide receiver on the year, averages about 10 fantasy points in standard leagues, and the Chiefs give up about 22. So Tom Brady doesn't have any of his starting wide receivers. Godwin's going to be out. Julio Jones is still injured, might not play this week. And Mike Evans is returning from his one-game suspension. And the Tampa Bay offense really needs Mike Evans, especially now with Godwin and Julio Jones not playing. Last week, they only had Gage, Perryman, Scotty Miller, and Cole Beasley. But Mike Evans is going to be a huge boost to that offense, especially against the Chiefs. Tom Brady is definitely going to have to throw it in this one to keep up with Mahomes, so it's a really good game for Mike Evans. At number 9, we have Michael Pittman Jr. against the Titans, 32nd ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging about 13 fantasy points, while the Titans allow 33 fantasy points to wide receivers. The Titans' cornerbacks are pretty depleted, and this is going to be a great game for Michael Pittman. Last week, the Titans allowed Matt Collins to get 158 yards and a touchdown. Michael Pittman Jr. is Matt Ryan's favorite guy, so you can really expect to see him get about 8 to 10 targets, well, maybe even 8 to 10 receptions, honestly, and really continue his strong fantasy start. Tyreek Hill at number 10 against the Bengals, 6th ranked wide receiver on the year, averages about 15 points in standard formats, while the Bengals give up about 16. As I said earlier, I think this is going to be a huge scoring game, and Tua already said if Tyreek Hill gets a lot of one-on-one opportunities, they're really going to feed him the ball this game. So Tyreek Hill is in position to do really, really well on Thursday night. At number 11, we have Deebo Samuel against the Rams, 25th ranked wide receiver on the year, averages 9.5 almost, and the Rams give up 33 points to wide receivers. This is a really good game. Well, this is a really good opportunity for Deebo Samuel. Last week, didn't put up too many points, wasn't really used in the passing game a lot, which doesn't really matter in standard leagues because of the way Deebo Samuel runs. But in PPR leagues, it's really going to affect Deebo's value. With getting George Kittle back, there's not enough target. Well, George Kittle isn't a heavily targeted tight end, but there are some red zone opportunities that might go away to George Kittle instead of Deebo Samuel. At number 12, we have Courtland Sutton against the Raiders, 23rd wide receiver on the year, averages about 9.9 points, and the Raiders give up about 20 points to wide receivers. Courtland Sutton has been pretty decent as of late. He really started the year off kind of slow, but Jerry Jeudy was barely used last game. Courtland Sutton had about 90 yards on like 8 catches, so he's definitely the number 1 wide receiver for Russell Wilson. It's just the offense has been terrible, so I'm not really sure how well any of the Broncos wide receivers can do until Russell Wilson and the team really kind of mesh together. At number 13, Jalen Waddle, the 2nd ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging 18 points, while the Bengals give about 15.9 to wide receivers. Jalen Waddle has been incredible this year, playing next to Tyreek Hill, really opens him up on offense. He's gotten a lot of opportunities, a lot of yards through the 3 weeks, and he makes an amazing 1-2 punch with Tyreek Hill. It's hard not to start Jalen Waddle at this point. Like, impossible nearly, but Jalen Waddle is a solid pickup. He's been a PPR monster for most fantasy owners, and I don't expect him to slow down anytime soon. At number 14, we have CeeDee Lamb against the Washington Commanders, 31 ranked wide receiver on the year, 8.6 fantasy points in standard leagues, and the Commanders give up about 35 points to wide receivers. For everyone that was worried about CeeDee Lamb when Dak Prescott got injured, I really wouldn't be worried anymore. Him and Cooper Rush clearly have great chemistry. So does Noah Brown with Cooper Rush. After that first dud of a game, CeeDee Lamb is kind of getting himself going. He's definitely way more valuable in PPR leagues, given that he gets about double-digit targets every week and hauls in about 8 catches every week. So that really boosts his PPR value. The Commanders really give up a lot of points to wide receivers, so this should be a hell of a game for CeeDee Lamb once again. At number 15, we have T. Higgins. Same game, Bengals versus Dolphins. Going to be a crazy game. I keep reiterating that. 33rd ranked wide receiver on the year. 8.4 fantasy points in standard leagues. And the Dolphins give up 25 points to wide receivers. T. Higgins' ranking would actually be higher if he didn't miss that one game. But regardless of that, T. Higgins has been pretty solid all throughout the year. And again, just like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, just like Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, who we'll talk about later. They make a crazy 1-2 offensive punch at the wide receiver. And I expect T. Higgins to do pretty well this game, especially if they double team Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is going to see a lot of action. Moving on to Mike Williams at 16, the number 28th ranked wide receiver on the year. About 9 fantasy points in standard leagues, and the Texans give about 20 points to wide receivers. Now, there's talk that Keenan Allen might be ready to come back. He might practice this week, so that might affect Mike Williams' ranking. If Keenan Allen does play, I do believe Keenan Allen, depending on if he's limited or not, will likely be ranked higher than Mike Williams. But for now, with no Keenan Allen confirmed to play, I have Mike Williams over here. The Texans aren't a great team, and the Chargers really need to get going. Eckler hasn't been playing amazing. Keenan Allen's hurt. Herbert got hurt and is still kind of playing through it. So the Chargers really need to get like a solid win under their belt, and there's no better team to get that win against than the Texans. Gabriel Davis at number 17 against the Ravens. Again, another high-scoring game I'm expecting. He's the 49th ranked wide receiver on the year because he missed that 1 week, and averages about 9.3 points in standard leagues. And again, the Ravens give up a whopping 37 points to wide receivers. So if the Ravens do try to take Stephon Diggs out of the game, this is going to be a Gabriel Davis game all day. However, Stephon Diggs is really talented. I still expect him to get his. So Gabriel Davis is going to be a nice, solid complimentary piece right next to him. Marquise Brown at number 18 against the Panthers, 18th ranked wide receiver, 10.4 fantasy points in standard leagues, and the Panthers give about 20 points to wide receivers. Marquise Brown is definitely more utilized in PPR leagues. He did get a lot of receptions last week as Kyler Murray and the Cardinals were down, which I feel like they're down most of the time. However, this game against the Panthers, the Cardinals might not be in a deficit, so they may run the ball more. The game script might work against Marquise Brown, but he's still a solid play nonetheless. Number 19, Terry McLaurin against the Cowboys, 20th ranked wide receiver on the year, about 10 points in standard leagues, and the Cowboys give up 16 points against wide receivers. The thing with the Cowboys is they're so good in their pass rush that it makes it really hard for quarterbacks to really even get going, which really limit the scoring of wide receivers. And although the Commanders have good wide receiving options with McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson, it might be a little bit hard for Carson Wentz to get the ball out. Christian Kirk at number 20 against the Eagles, 5th ranked wide receiver on the year, averaging almost 15 points a game in standard leagues, while the Eagles give up about 20. The Eagles defense is pretty solid. Overall, I think the Eagles are a hell of a team this year. But Christian Kirk has been a PPR monster, put up a lot of yards, gets a lot of catches. And the Jacksonville offense, I'll say surprisingly, has been really good. I did expect them to get a lot better. They have just so many weapons now. But even they're doing way better than I even thought. So Trevor Lawrence has been playing great in his in this season, and he's really kind of letting the game come to him. And that's really good for Jacksonville weapons such as Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram is even doing work, and James Robinson. At number 21, Drake London against the Browns, 11th ranked wide receiver on the year, almost 12 fantasy points in standard leagues, while the Browns give up about 28 points to wide receivers. This is a great game for Drake London and the Falcons. The Browns might not have Myles Garrett, who unfortunately got into a huge accident. But nonetheless, the Browns are a solid defensive team. They do stop the run really well, and Atlanta has pretty good wide receivers to kind of combat that. Receivers, because Kyle Pitts is a solid receiving option as well. So I do feel like Mariota has been playing really well at QB for them, and I think they could kind of continue to get Drake London going and Kyle Pitts going. At number 22, we have DK Metcalf against the Lions, 52nd ranked wide receiver in standard leagues, only 5.8 points. The Lions give up about 28 points to wide receivers. So this is a great game for DK Metcalf to bounce back. I feel like Metcalf really has been very disappointing, at least this year, in my opinion. He has been a little bit salvageable in PPR leagues just due to his ability to get a couple of catches in. However, in standard leagues, he really hasn't been getting much yardage, and that's really been affecting his play. I feel like this is a solid game for him to bounce back into. Moving on to Amari Cooper at number 23 against the Falcons, 13th ranked wide receiver, 11.3 fantasy points in standard leagues, and the Falcons allowed 30 points to wide receivers. Jacoby Brissett isn't the greatest of quarterbacks. He does play a little bit more short downage, short yards, but Amari Cooper has been thriving as of late. After that pitiful performance week 1, he's been really coming into his own as the Cleveland wide receiver 1. I do expect that to continue just because Brissett has shown a lot of confidence in him and in Njoku as well. So I do expect Amari Cooper to kind of keep going, especially against the weak Atlanta defense. Devontae Smith at 24 against the Jaguars, 19th ranked wide receiver, 10 points in standard leagues, and the Jaguars give up about 26 points. Now, Devontae Smith had a hell of a game last week, but the Eagles have so many weapons offensively. Goddard, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts is a weapon himself on the ground, Miles Sanders as well. There's so much to go around in Philly where I don't see Devontae Smith every week putting up the kind of numbers that he did last week, obviously. But Devontae Smith is still an excellent 1-2 punch next to A.J. Brown, or 1-2-3 punch with Goddard as well. But don't expect the same numbers from Devontae Smith year round. Obviously, here and there, he'll have himself a game. Hello. At 25, we have Brandon Cooks against the Chargers, 60th ranked wide receiver on the year, only averages 5.3 standard league points, and the Chargers give about 27 points to wide receivers. Cooks has been a little underwhelming this year. He started the year off pretty good, but ever since then he's kind of fallen off. A very underrated PPR player. He gets a ton of catches, a good amount of yards. However, he really hasn't been able to get it going so far in the year. Even in PPR formats, he's been a little bit disappointing. Hopefully he can bounce back against the Chargers since they do give about 27 points to wide receivers. But the Chargers D is pretty good, so I'm a little worried about Brandon Cooks this week as well. Deontay Johnson at 26 against the Jets, 37th ranked wide receiver, 7.2 standard fantasy league points, and the Jets give up about 27 points to wide receivers. I kind of want nothing to do with the Pittsburgh offense, whether it's Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth. Just the offense in general has been pretty abysmal, and for owners that drafted Deontay Johnson high, Najee Harris high, I wouldn't be looking to trade them, but I'd be lowering expectations when starting them. Curtis Samuel at 27, a nice surprise in the fantasy wide receiver standings throughout the year so far. 14th ranked wide receiver, 11 standard league fantasy points, and the Cowboys give up about 16 to wide receivers. Curtis Samuel has been a PPR monster this year. He really shows a connection with Carson Wentz. In PPR leagues, he's definitely more valuable. I think he gets about 8 to 10 targets a game. So that's really beneficial for Curtis Samuel owners. And he was a free agent pickup for most fantasy owners. So it's really solid when you can get a 27th ranked wide receiver off the waiver wire. Keenan Allen I have at 28. This is really all impending if he plays or not. If he does play, I do expect Keenan Allen to jump, depending on if he's going to be limited or not. But for now, I have him ranked at 28th. If he does play with no limitations, he will most likely hit the top 15. Chris Olave and Michael Thomas, 29-30 against the Vikings. Olave is the 27th ranked wide receiver, while Michael Thomas is number 12. Olave has 9 fantasy points in standard leagues, and Michael Thomas gets about 12, and the Vikings give about 22 points to wide receivers. Chris Olave had a hell of a game last week. He had 147 yards on 9 catches. Really balled out. Michael Thomas has been pretty good all year. I think last week he had a pretty disappointing week. Only 5 receptions on 49 yards, no touchdowns. The touchdowns really boosted Michael Thomas's value throughout the year. But Chris Olave really came into his own this week, and I feel like it's only upwards from here. I do think his 27th ranking is going to come higher and higher. Michael Thomas, on the other hand, is someone that I feel like will be dropping down in the rankings as the year goes by. He is healthier, which is great to see, but I believe he's a little banged up. He should be playing, but with Jameis Winston at QB, his deep ball is really what gets him points, but also gets him in trouble. So it's a little double-edged sword thing there. But Chris Olave has been great for them. Michael Thomas has been solid for them. I would start them both with confidence. Tyler Lockett at 31 against the Lions, 39th ranked wide receiver, 7 points in standard leagues, while the Lions give up about 28. Again, Seattle offense, they've been passing much more than we thought. DK Metcalf really hasn't been able to put in a lot of work with the opportunities given to him. And Tyler Lockett has been getting a little bit of the short downage. He hasn't gotten a touchdown yet this year, so the Lions are a good shot to get that touchdown for him. But I still think DK Metcalf will probably have the better week here. Rashad Bateman at number 32 against the Buffalo Bills, 16th ranked wide receiver, averages about 10.9 points in standard leagues, and the Bills give about 18 points. The Bills defense is pretty damn good. They just signed another corner, and Rashad Bateman has been the number 1 wide receiver for Baltimore. It's been really Mark Andrews, but wide receiver based, it's been Rashad Bateman. The Ravens have so many options. Duvernay also gets a touchdown here and there every game. So the Ravens do have a lot of options. Bateman has been solid for them, has been a vertical threat, and I expect that to continue for Bateman. DJ Moore at number 33 hasn't been solid all year. 54th ranked wide receiver, 5.6 points in standard leagues. But the Cardinals do give up 21 points to opposing wide receivers in standard leagues. And I think if there was a game for DJ Moore to kind of get into rhythm, this is a game against the Cardinals. The Cardinals defense isn't amazing, and the Panthers offense hasn't been amazing either. McCaffrey has been a little disappointing. DJ Moore has been a lot of disappointing. So this is definitely a game to bounce back for him. Garrett Wilson at number 34 against the Steelers, 14th ranked wide receiver, 11 points in standard leagues, and the Pittsburgh Steelers give up about 27 points to wide receivers. Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, who I have ranked at number 39, I feel like they're a great 1-2 punch for the Jets, especially with Joe Flacco under center. However, Zach Wilson is coming back this week, and most likely will start. So I would kind of give them a downgrade just to see how Zach Wilson is doing. With Joe Flacco at quarterback, I think the wide receivers are more valuable. And with Zach Wilson at QB, I think the running backs are more valuable. So Garrett Wilson owners, Elijah Moore owners, even though they're both playing pretty good, Garrett Wilson playing amazing so far, I do think they take a little bit of a hit with Zach Wilson coming back. Brandon Ayuk against the Rams, 40th ranked wide receiver on the year, 7 points in standard leagues, and the Rams give about 33 points to wide receivers. As we spoke about earlier with Deebo Samuel, this is a great game for both Deebo and Brandon Ayuk to kind of get out of their slump. The Rams give up a lot of points, and this is really a game where the 49ers have to get involved offensively. Obviously, they're a huge run-dependent team, and they play well doing that with their wide receivers getting involved in the run game as well, Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. But they also need to be effective in the passing game for the 49ers offense to really work. Juju at number 36 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 60th ranked wide receiver on the year, 5.3 points in standard leagues and 22 points. Tampa Bay gives up 22 points to opposing wide receivers. I'm not even sure which Kansas City wide receiver to trust. I feel like it's kind of throwing a dart and just closing your eyes. Juju, Scantling, Mecole Hardman, they've all taken turns being the wide receiver 1. Travis Kelce really is the dominant force for that team. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been playing pretty solid, but Juju, if he can maintain in that slot performance, I feel like that's where he will thrive. Tampa Bay and Kansas City, I know they're going to try to put points on the board, especially Tom Brady against the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is really a game where Kansas City is going to try to get out far and fast. So let's see if this works for Juju this week. Jerry Jeudy at number 37 against the Rams. I do feel like his production has been falling off, and Courtland Sutton has really been establishing himself as the wide receiver 1 on the team, kind of running away with that. Earlier in the year, I thought it was like pretty close. It could be either man's job, but definitely Courtland Sutton's running away with it now. However, this could be a good bounce back game for Jerry Jeudy against the Raiders, so let's see how that plays out for them. Allen Robinson at number 38 against the 49ers. Tough matchup for the Rams, especially for the wide receivers. But with a lot of attention focused on Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson always has an opportunity to put up points. He's only averaging 4.9 standard league fantasy points. So it's a tough play. However, next to Cooper Kupp on I wouldn't say struggling Rams team, but on a defensive matchup against the 49ers, this may be a tough game for Allen Robinson. Elijah Moore, we spoke about Allen Lazard at number 40 against the Patriots, number 51 ranked wide receiver, 9 standard fantasy league points, and the Patriots give about 17 fantasy points to wide receivers in standard leagues. I don't feel really confident starting any of the Green Bay wide receivers. Allen Lazard, Romeo Doubs that I have ranked at number 42. But obviously some teams don't have much depth at wide receiver. I would probably start Lazard over Doubs this week just because of the familiarity with Aaron Rodgers. However, Doubs has been playing himself higher and higher on the rankings every week. So I do like Doubs. Has a lot of similarities to other great wide receivers. He's fast. He can has great cuts. Pretty athletic as well. So Romeo Doubs is going to have a great career. I just think Allen Lazard is their number 1 for now. But I wouldn't say by far. Adam Thielen at number 41 against the Saints, 40th ranked wide receiver in the year, 7 standard league fantasy points, while the Saints give about 20 a game. Adam Thielen is definitely more valuable in PPR leagues just because of his slot capabilities. Next to Justin Jefferson in a game where they might be missing Dalvin Cook, this could be a great game from Adam Thielen. I would say he's been a little bit underwhelming so far. I did expect a better year from him. However, there's a lot of the year left, so let's see if Adam Thielen can kind of switch it up. Jahan Dotson at number 43, another Commanders wide receiver, makes the top 50. 22nd ranked wide receiver on the year, scoring about 10 fantasy points a game. However, his numbers are a little bit inflated because of the early touchdowns he got through the year. Don't get me wrong, he's been solid. I still think he's a viable option every week. However, if Terry McLaurin's got it going, if Curtis Samuel's got it going, and Jahan Dotson really isn't targeted much outside of the red zone, you're really depending on him getting those touchdowns to keep his value up. Treylon Burks at number 44 against the Colts, 74th ranked wide receiver on the year, only 4 fantasy points a game, and the Colts give about 17 points a game. The Titans offense hasn't been amazing. I feel like Derrick Henry's been disappointing. Robert Woods has been very bad. I actually have Treylon Burks ranked ahead of him this week. But Burks is likely their wide receiver 1 at this point. However, Tannehill hasn't really been able to get to his wide receivers. I expect a good game for Treylon Burks, but it might be tough against the Indy defense that just doesn't give up a lot of points to wide receivers. Robert Woods, on the other hand, if I have him, I probably won't start him. I likely wouldn't start Burks either. I'll try to go for, hopefully I have other wide receivers, but if I was stuck between choosing Burks or Woods, I would probably start Burks this week. Greg Dortch at 45 against the Panthers. 28th ranked wide receiver, about 8.6 standard fantasy points. And the Carolina Panthers give up about 21 points. Now, Greg Dortch is in an interesting spot because Rondale Moore is coming back soon. DeAndre Hopkins should be back in, 3 weeks, I believe. So his playing time is going to reduce throughout the weeks, especially when Rondale Moore comes back. He's probably going to take over as wide receiver 2. And then DeAndre Hopkins comes back, he's probably going to take over wide receiver 1. Moving Marquise Brown and Rondale Moore down. But as of right now, he's been pretty solid for the Cardinals throughout the year. Definitely makes his impact in the game. And I think he may even move up in some rankings. I feel like you can start him over Burks. You could probably move him into the top 40. Yeah, there's an argument to move him into the top 40 just because he's playing so well. And the Cardinals have been trying to come back from a lot of leads. But I do expect the Cardinals to be in the lead in this game. Claypool at 46 against the Jets. Again, trying to stay away from the Pittsburgh offense. Russell Gage against Kansas City. If Julio Jones doesn't play, Russell Gage is going to be their number 2 wide receivers. So he should be in line for a good game, especially when I think Tom Brady is really going to try to put up points. Scantling, the Kansas City wide receivers, I wouldn't know who to start. It's basically spinning a wheel or throwing a dart at this point. Darnell Mooney, I have him at 49. He's been dropping rapidly. Really is putting up barely any points. 120th ranked wide receiver. Chicago does not throw the ball enough for Darnell Mooney to really get involved. And every week, he doesn't even see the ball, honestly. And he ended last year so great that a lot of people had him as a breakout target. But this is kind of like my last opportunity before he falls out of the top 50. I still wouldn't be starting him. There's so many better options, but I don't think you can drop him yet. I feel like he can potentially come back from this, but it's going to be really hard. Zay Jones at number 50 against the Eagles. Pretty great year for him so far. 35th ranked wide receiver, 8 points. Eagles give about 20 fantasy points to wide receivers. He's been a nice surprise in that Jacksonville offense, playing next to Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, James Robinson. And I really like Zay Jones. I feel like he's working himself up into even higher in the top 50. You could argue that he should be ranked in the top 40. But I feel like we need another week of him doing well to kind of feel confident in starting him above some of these other players. Moving on to PPR leagues, I still have Cooper Kupp number 1. I do, however, have Stephon Diggs number 2 over Justin Jefferson, and I have Amon-Ra St. Brown go ahead of Devontae Adams, and Michael Pittman also joining the fray at number 7. Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Stephon Diggs, very high usage players along with Cooper Kupp. Where they don't necessarily rely on the deep ball. They work pretty much everywhere on the field. Same actually with Devontae Adams and A.J. Brown. But Amon-Ra St. Brown has been seeing double-digit targets for like 10 games in a row now. Michael Pittman has been amazing. Devontae Adams is kind of in a downtrend right now. However, I do expect him to bounce back as the year progresses. And Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, although they can be PPR monsters, I feel like Jamar Chase could be in line for a good week, but he'll most likely benefit from long passes where Amon-Ra St. Brown is really just getting like 14, 15 yards at a time with multiple catches. Really boosts his PPR value. Tyreek Hill, another one where I feel like could be in line for a great PPR game, just because Tua said that they're really going to feed him the ball. Jalen Waddle also gets a bump here, while Mike Evans takes a little bit of a dip. Deebo Samuel as well. CeeDee Lamb, I believe, goes up a little bit, not too much, just because, again, has been a PPR monster the past 2 weeks at least. If we're discounting week 1, CeeDee Lamb has been pretty amazing so far with Cooper Rush. Christian Kirk, another player that gets a huge bump in PPR leagues, along with Marquise Brown. Players like Deontay Johnson take a little bit of hit. Gabe Davis, Michael Thomas, who don't really grab many catches, but they do score in the touchdown department. I would say it hinders them a little bit in PPR formats. Terry McLaurin's another one. He's been Lower on the target share percentage that I thought. Curtis Samuel kind of not dominates, but Curtis Samuel gets the highest target share on the team. Terry McLaurin, like week 1, I think he only had two targets, 1 catch for like 50 yards and a touchdown, which really held up his value for the week. However, Terry McLaurin is still a pretty good threat, so I didn't want to rank him a little bit lower in PPR leagues, but I do have Curtis Samuel over here ranked higher. Rashad Bateman takes a little bit of a hit. Chris Olave does as well. Although he did grab a lot of receptions last week where he really popped off, I feel like we need another game similar to that where he gets that kind of target share where I can rank him higher in PPR leagues. But it's also just that a lot of these players above him just get so many receptions, minus Rashad Bateman, who really kind of is another vertical threat. Players like Garrett Wilson, Adam Thielen, Brandon Ayuk could really benefit here. Elijah Moore, Juju, if he's playing out of the slot, he could have a good game. However, I'm not sure which Kansas City wide receivers start. Zay Jones, I have higher here. I had him at 50, I believe, in standard leagues. He's been a great PPR monster this year for the Jaguars. Along with Kirk, Trevor Lawrence has really been throwing the ball a lot. And whenever they run the ball with James Robinson, they've been effective as well. So Jacksonville looks pretty good so far. At least they're pretty exciting to watch. Some other players that took a hit, I believe I have Allen Robinson a little bit lower. Jerry Jeudy a little bit lower just because they're not utilized as much. Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson goes a little bit lower. Claypool as well. Jarvis Landry's an interesting one. Week 1, he looked like he was going to be a huge PPR monster this year, but he's really fallen off since then. Maybe he can get it back going again this week, but Chris Olave has been pretty good. Michael Thomas has been pretty good, so we'll see how Jarvis Landry does this week. Jacoby Myers, another pretty solid option at wide receiver this year with the Patriots. However, Mac Jones might not play, so I'm a little bit hesitant to start him. But he has been solid in PPR leagues. Although the 52nd ranked wide receiver, he puts up 14.4 points in PPR leagues. Like his ranking is likely low due to missing a game. Like Zay Jones is 27th ranked with 14 points. So you can assume that Jacoby Myers is like 25th or 24th ranked by average. But that's all for our rankings. Let me know down below your start and sit questions. I will be answering them throughout the week. And as always, leave a comment, subscribe, like, and I'll see you next time.